Hi, Tony. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Igor. Lovely to join you on this show so we can inspire more people together.
Absolutely. So, to start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and how you got to where you are today?
I'm Tony J. Selimi. For those people who are going to be listening to this podcast, I'm globally known as a life strategist and business growth expert specialized in human behavior and transforming every area of your life. So I'm also an author, filmmaker, speaker, TEDx speaker, and I travel the world teaching my climb greater heights, inclusive training, life and business mastery training. So my life, I was born in a small town in Western North Macedonia called Gostivar to a family of restaurateurs and farmers. And I came into this world with a challenge. I had crooked legs, which my doctors back then told my parents that, probably I would never be able to walk properly. But my mother, with the knowledge of the elders before her, she used certain old-fashioned techniques to straighten my legs. And, 3 years down the line, I was able to walk and to run with fellow children. So, I know struggle from the beginning. And I lived in two different places. My parents had the restaurants in Bosnia and Croatia. The farm was in Macedonia. So when I came into the age of going to school, I was sent back to Macedonia. By this time, I learned quite a lot of skills around when it comes to restaurants, when it comes to arithmetics, when it comes to languages. So when I started school, I already spoke 3 languages fluently and I knew maths. And some of the challenges I had to experience, I also later on, I experienced severe illness. My lungs collapsed and my heart, which left me hospitalized by the age of 9. Spent a lot of time in hospital, unconscious, which then my parents turned out to traditional healers and people who could help outside the medical kind of profession, which then sparked in me the curiosity as they started making me feel better. What is the unknown that we're not really aware of? So I really wanted to know both science and also spirituality of the unseen, how that can help us. Then during the high school, I experienced bullying, which I had to fight against that. I just became better and better in certain subjects and start, winning a lot of awards and learning. And then as I went to university, I went to Zagreb, one of the best known universities in engineering, which I thought, okay, I finished all of my troubles and, I'm in the best place with the best people, with the best school. Then a year down the line, the civil war started in former Yugoslavia. So I was conscripted into the army to fight the civil war I deep down despised. Fast forward, a lot of things happened during the civil war that I never knew whether I'm going to survive or not. And eventually my life was saved and I was sent back to Macedonia and my mother borrowed some money and she put me on a one-way flight ticket to London. And then I ended up homeless in London.
You can't leave us there. What happened next?
I was waiting for you to ask that question. So, as you can imagine, I came here with a lot of trauma, with a lot of things that I had to cope with broken identity, what happened back at home, the loss, the grief, being in a new country. As you know, probably we can see it nowadays that nobody likes refugees or migrants, despite the fact that, those people go through the most traumatic experiences without their fault. So I had to deal with all of that. And I started really, after all of my tears and crying disappeared and living homeless, I started pretty much cleaning streets, cleaning parks, cleaning people's gardens, carrying people shopping. And eventually people opened up the path for me to work in a restaurant. And I started working in a restaurant and eventually I got a roof over my head. And I kept working 3-4 jobs and I paid my way into education and including graduating from one of the top 4 engineering universities in UK. So that was all self-funded and pretty much I worked about 8 years, 365 days a year and studied full time. So my life was pretty much going back to my childhood dreams, the dreams that were broken during the war, but at the same time being able to earn enough money to pay for my own education and then support the family back in the war zone. So 10 years of my life was nonstop work, nonstop study.
Well, sometimes, all the work pays off. I mean, actually, it always does, in my view. What kind of work were you doing at that time? What inspired your transition into coaching?
We're talking about now 15 years from that moment, the transition. So during the 15 years, I pretty much built a very successful technology career. So, I went both working in private and public sectors. So I started from just out of university because I didn't have experience in the corporate world. So I started pretty much doing like a person who makes coffee and teas and getting to know the job. From there, I was employed in the help desk. From help desk, I became a help desk manager. From there, I became a network manager. From there, I became an IT manager. From there, I became a CIO. So it was a progressive growth, but consistently not only developing myself professionally, but also I invested a proportion of my money and my income into continuous development, both in technology, spirituality, personal development, in leadership, and every single course that was helping me to get better. So eventually, pretty much, I reached the peak of my career, and then the financial crisis happened in 2008, which then had a knock-on effect, and I was made redundant. Pretty much, I was employed to do all the job, and then the last person leaving the company was myself, which then brought me back to almost 20 years gap from being homeless to almost experiencing homeless again. And I remember, going to Oxford Street after I was made redundant and sitting down and watching all those buses at 3 o'clock in the morning and almost considering to commit suicide. I said, why did I do 20 years of work to almost bring myself back to this situation with no fault? When I look at myself being the civil war, somebody else caused that. When I'm looking at it in the financial war, somebody else caused that. But the common denominator was me being in those situations. So I chose not to throw myself in front of a bus, but I chose to, stay in there until the morning. Then I had this big realization, as the shops started opening up, everybody was shopping, everybody was going with their day-to-day stuff. So there was no sign of the crisis that the newspapers, the TV, the radio, the companies about this global crisis. That the realization came to me saying, so there are people out there who are not impacted at all what's going on in the outer reality. And there are people who become victims of whatever happens outside. So I went like, okay, what is it about me that makes me the victim? So that became the journey that then went on for me to invest a lot of the money to go back into training, into coaching, hiring the best experts to really clarify who I am, what I'm here to do, what are my skills, and how do I put that into use and go out there and really honor the mission which I had since I was a child, which was traveling, teaching, inspiring, educating, and creating healing, but also growth in wherever I am. So out of that process, I did another MBA through which I published my first book, A Path to Wisdom, and which went global, won many awards, sold a lot of copies, and then pretty much I dedicated my life ever since to bring those teachings to 1 billion people around the world.
Wow, that's great. So really, 2008, you chose life over throwing yourself under a bus, and from there, you just decided to pursue what you really wanted, and then you've obviously never looked back. But do you think if you wouldn't have lost what you have had in the crisis in 2008, that you would have been where you are today, or you would have just kept on cruising down that road?
Well, I'm sort of person, I'm grateful where I am today, for sure. So there's nothing I would change in my past. But the reality is, when we go through those experiences, and when we choose growth through those experiences, when we choose lessons and learning, and we choose to go beyond those experiences, we literally forge the wisdom required for you to do what I do today, which means what I'm doing with all my clients. Because, through going through those experiences, you build many skills, you grow your confidence, you grow your certainty, and for sure, the road that somebody is going through later on when I became a coach. So people instantly build that trust relationship required to be able to take the persons through the journey. So for me, every experience was key to the person I've become today and the kind of life strategist and a transformational coach I am to all of my clients, regardless of their background or the challenge. Why? Because I invested over 30 years in research, into study, into expertise, and broadening my expertise and my knowledge so I can solve more and more problems for my clients. So every experience, every investment has been the key ingredient for the person I've become and I continue to becoming.
And when you started down this road over 15 years ago, did you have a specific focus in mind, that you were driving towards, when you said you kept on educating yourself and you kept on investing in yourself, did you have a specific point that you were striving towards?
So the reality, Igor, is in every moment in time, you have a specific focus. So, if I go back the moment I was made redundant, okay, my focus was to go back and work and have a paycheck. So, the focus consistently keeps changing and transforming as you go through the journey. For sure, my focus was to be able to integrate all of my knowledge and put that into use for humanity, not just for individuals. Because I saw so many things in the corporate world that I knew by integrating this knowledge, I could go back and help leaders. I could go back and help businesses. I could go back and transform cultures. I could go back and help people having relationship issues that impacts their professional life. I could go back, help people build wealth. I could go back and help people transform their psychology. I could go back and put the knowledge how people can better communicate when the stress is high. So, of course, all of this has been a part of the focus, but also one of the key drivers is, which I always say to people, my parents were huge on education. So, because they worked 18, 20 hours a day sometimes to feed everybody in the family and everything that was going back then, 40 years ago, they always said to me, with education is like water, so you constantly need it. So, and the moment we become arrogant that I don't need it is the moment that you are not educated.
Yeah,
And you're
I
not
don't.
transforming and you're not growing and you're not changing, you're not adapting. So for me, I built that mindset since I was a kid because also I was very gifted. So therefore, my parents, from a very young age, I'm the youngest of six, they all had the same opportunity for my parents to invest in private education. But I'm the only one who, on top of my formal education, my parents invested, like, for instance, when I was in primary school, I had secondary school teachers working with me. When I was in secondary school, I had high school teachers working with me. When I was in high school, I had professors. And when I was in university, I had doctors working with me privately. So the only time I did not invest is the transition from war and homelessness into work and graduating. The moment I graduated, the moment I start having the salary, I continued with that investment. So I would put 20% of my salary every year into learning, into working with coaches, into working with mentors, into going into training, both on a personal development level, but also professional level in technology, IT, leadership, business skills. So for me, that's been something that consistency has been into my life, and also something that created consistent result with the clients I've been serving for the last 15 years.
That's good to know. Thank you. So you've developed your own coaching methodology over the last 10 years. Can you walk us through what makes it?
Well, as an engineer, I love to solve problems. As a mathematician and a physicist, I love to really understand the bigger picture of life and how those laws really apply to us on a day-to-day basis. So for me, when I went into writing a book, one thing that I observed with every person and every project for 15 years working in technology is what was happening inside the person that affects everything what they do on the outside. So I really wanted to create something that empowers and educates people to be able to look at the 8 critical areas of life and being able to invest and consistently grow them. And grow them sort of in balance, because if you don't grow one area, somebody else will overpower you in that area and then you lose control. And the fears and insecurities, all of that kick in. So I wanted to really bring a methodology together that bridges science and spirituality, that brings business and leadership and technology with psychology, emotional intelligence, and self-mastery. So I sat down and I spent 12 weeks in meditation. I wanted to understand the consciousness and how we are relatable to that and how all those universal laws apply to us. So then I said, what is it, the 3 major things that every human being I've ever come across, and even nowadays have issues with and are being challenged by? One is, I meet many people who pursue success, growth, financial thinking, and growing business, and they suffer in their relationship and they suffer with their physical, mental, and emotional health. So that was common. Health was common across all those individuals. So you go in pursuit of something, but you forget about yourself, and therefore your physical body communicates to you. The second part is no matter what conflict I've observed, whether in my personal life, whether with my family, whether with my friends, or socially or at work, people didn't have that inner peace. They were craving for inner peace. So constantly they had this war with thyself and with others. So whether you observe that into a relationship, whether you observe that into family dynamics, whether you observe that in the social life, whether you observe that in business or in leadership, people were consistently conflicting with each other.
What was the cause of the inner conflict, or what is a
Well, there are
common
millions
cause
of
of that
quotes. We
inner?
can have about 1,000 hours together for me to explain that. For people who are really interested, they can go start reading The Path to Wisdom, and we'll give them a better clarity for them to go into that, because there are millions of reasons why this happens. And the other part is basically people not having that kind of balance. So when I wrote The Path to Wisdom, I wanted to create a methodology that handles those three major problems for people, and giving them a methodology that is both practical, they can follow, but also empowers your spiritual life, your mental, your emotional, your physical body, your relationship, your profession and your career, your wealth building, and also who you become socially. What is the kind of social things you can give to humanity, basically. So I created the methodology, which stands for TGS Evolutionary Method, which is ALARM, the acronym ALARM. And the reason I put the acronym in ALARM, it's about really people to be able to start to listen to the inner alarms that most people ignore. They only pay attention when something really bad happens to them. So the biggest alarm for the body is when the body is ill. And most people ignore those alarms because they might perceive the illness too small for them to affect them. But in reality, the more we ignore them, the more become bigger problems. So, when an illness appears in the physical body, it's because the person is not really listening. And that could be many things in your life, what you're not listening. It could be internal listening, meaning I'm not truly listening what my core values are, what my beliefs are, what my behaviors are, what my actions are, what those experiences that I went through, trauma and everything else, are speaking about me. And then listening on the outside when you have for instance, let's say you have repeated patterns into your relationship and you keep going from one relationship to another relationship, but you're never truly listening what is the cause to that. Or if you go from one job to another job and you never feel satisfied, you never feel fulfilled. Or you earn money, you lose money. Earn money, you lose money. Or, you end up speaking to people, and some people can trigger in you a lot of emotions and you lose emotional control. So I wanted to give people a methodology they can go back within and listen to those alarms across the 8 critical areas of life, and also being able to identify external alarms and link them with the internal alarms so they can come back into finding inner peace, finding that balance required psychologically, emotionally, physically, everything else, so the body is in the most productive, most energized state, and also making sure you are in mental, emotional, physical health, no matter what you do. So those 3 states are not affected by external circumstances. So that was the creation of the first methodology, which is the basis of all of my work, because behind those 5 steps, there's 25 core principles, which then handle both the duality, meaning they handle the inner demons that we have and the inner angel in ourselves and all those different communications. So it really goes in the depth of understanding you at a deep level of who you are. And how do you then align yourself with those universal laws for you to create most inspired life? Now, when I started then working with a lot of clients and going global and speaking and doing a lot of things, I always love to solve the next big problem. The reason I created the TGS Evolutionary Method Alarm, because with all the different methods that I studied, as engineer, I could see faults. And I would ask the question, what is beyond that? What can I create beyond that nobody else can create? Meaning innovation. Because, what worked 100 years ago doesn't work now.
When it comes to the self, you don't think that what's worked 100 years ago works now as well?
Well, not in general, no. It would be something very specific, but not in general, no. Because the self, 100 years self, is not the self that had a phone and we're doing a podcast right now. It was a total ignorant self. So we didn't have all the knowledge and everything else. So,
That's true.
it's why, when people make comparison, they don't compare realities. They love to compare. People do this also with people, by the way. So, when people say to me, when I introduce myself, oh, I'm a coach, then I ask them certain questions and they suddenly realize they're out of depth with me. So you might be coaching your authenticity, but you don't compare yourself with another human being because you haven't lived their experiences. You haven't invested the time and energy and money that they have. So therefore, the knowledge is very different. And this is where, again, where external circumstances dictate you. An authentic person will never say to somebody else, I'm a coach like you. They will honor their greatness, they honor their greatness. So, many times I help so many coaches to create authentic work. And also when people say to me, oh, there are many coaches. Well, if you're going to compare yourself like that, you'll never create you and the best version of you where you can go out there and be of service to people in your authentic way. So, I've built the business by being authentic, not by being fake. So, the next big problem I saw globally was how technology is shaping our lives and how technology is creating the loneliness in people. How we're losing and transforming certain values like social interaction, like children growing with other children playing instead of being on iPads and being on the phones. How people go on a date and they have their phones in there on a date and looking at the apps while they're on a date with somebody. Those are the things that people don't really think what is this behavior behind, but they've accepted it as a tolerant behavior. So when you have a low self-worth and you haven't worked with an expert to really make you think what do those behaviors mean, you tolerate a lot. And therefore, you're going to attract a lot of partners who will challenge you to your core and sometimes make you even ill, by the way. And then you blame others, they are narcissists, without really reflecting back saying, what do I do that causes this? Where are my personal boundaries? So in #loneliness, the virus of modern age, the process that I took in there, it's about what it means to be in the ocean of oneness. So if we are to embrace the duality of life, and if you look at technology, how that is shaping, how do you use technology consciously? And also is there where I also predicted AI, what's happening right now. So, almost 8 years ago, I predicted what's going to happen in there. So I used all of my knowledge, and I predicted exactly what's going to happen going forward with technology. And we are in that stage now, and we're going to be going in the stages I predicted in my TED Talk, Technological Armageddon, a Wake-Up Call, which is also a chapter in the book, #loneliness. So as I put all of this together, my service keep growing, clients keep growing, both from a training, personal, coaching, my retreats, and being in TV, media, podcasts, everything I was doing, the COVID happened. So for many people, COVID put them into really bad situation. For me, I was delivering a workshop with 3 major clients from US in the Caribbean. So basically, as the news started breaking up, in the evenings while I was away from my clients, I started writing down, if this were to go into full pandemic globally, what will happen? So I started really getting the clarity, what would happen at the global level, what would happen at a country level, what would happen on a city level, what would happen into family level, and broke down all the single problems. And I said, I'm going to write the root cause and the problems that people were going to experience. So I wrote the Unfakeable Code, a 5-step methodology about how we wear masks, the many personas, and how that then triggers those global events that most people think they're unrelatable. They are all relatable. And basically how to bring people back into their true authenticity, which means I take control, mental, emotional control, no matter what happens outside of me. I lead with love and authenticity, and I create my life on my own terms. That's the main 3 key messages behind the Unfakeable Code and behind the method that people who go and they can clear those masks. So again, I wanted to create original methodologies that have been tested in the field, they are science backed up, and they are holistically delivered. So when I did all of this, this has already been implemented by thousands of hours that I've worked with clients. And then as we went through all of those things, many people complained, I continued doing my work. So during the lockdown, I transferred all of my clients into Zoom coaching. And for the people for the retreat, the moment they opened those travel corridors, I started redirecting clients in different places so we can still do the work. So while most people were complaining there's no work, my clients invested when everybody was suffering, and we built everything ready when the lockdown opened up. So one is a proactive way to looking at any problem, and one is reactive, means if this happens, I'll do this. So true entrepreneurs and people who are leaders and global leaders, they don't react. They plan in advance, they have a strategy, they have experts like myself, we do all the work. So when the market goes back, they are ready. But most people became victims during that period. So half of the world made a lot of money, made a lot of profit. Half of the world, they played the victim card. The question is which one you choose. Just the way I chose life and growth instead of choosing to throw myself in front of a bus. So life is full of choices. And then again, I love solving problems. So COVID passed and everything else. And as more I was working with more people, with more businesses, more leaders, more entrepreneurs, more lawyers, different professions and everything else, I went to what is it truly all these people at the essence ask of me? And the reality is, I'm taking them on a journey of personal excellence or professional excellence or business excellence, meaning when you are in your optimum power, how do you show up in your life? How do you show up with your relationship? How do you show up with your profession? How do you show up with your friends, with your family, with your partner? How do you show up as a leader? So I then wrote A Path to Excellence, again, bridging many, many different philosophies and strategies and insights that I gathered over 30 years into 8-step method for people to go and really understand and clarify what is it that makes you the person who thrives for excellence in whatever chosen area you want. Because for excellence, for somebody could be an artist, for somebody could be a better singer, for somebody could be a better coach, somebody could be, I want to be a better husband, I want to be a better wife, I want to be a better child, or I want to be a better leader. So the methodology is written in a way that no matter where you are in that spectrum, it will help you and will guide you step by step how to continue into that personal or professional leadership excellence, that with that you inspire the world. And then I just published the latest book, and the latest book is Climb Greater Heights, the training retreat I used for the last 12 years to help build 7, 8, 9-figure businesses and also empower people in every area of life, which then what are the steps as an entrepreneur or as a business owner you can truly continue doing for you to raise your credibility, your influence, your authority, your sales, your negotiation skills, your partnership, and how do you really keep growing that, and how do you use proportion of that to give back for charitable or philanthropic causes. That's how the Climb Greater Heights was born.
I listened to Climb Greater Heights recently, and I gotta say, some of the things I was already familiar with, but there were definitely some things that got me thinking and perhaps inspired some ideas that I'm still breaking apart and thinking about. But definitely, I enjoyed listening to it. But what you said is that your approach really starts with looking at yourself, looking at the alarms, which is looking at what is it that's right now not working in your life, maybe even things that someone's not aware of, and then building on top of that, taking into account who you are, figuring that out, what you strive for, and then building on top of that. And it seems like the sequence of your books, and I don't think this was planned because it's over such a long period of time, the way that you described it seems like it's taking the fundamentals and building onto that. So you mentioned you've written about AI before AI really became, like a thing, and that you
The
predicted.
topic and the thing, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's everywhere now. So do you see it in the future transforming, our interactions, from our interactions with people to how you interact with your clients?
Mhm.
To you approach coaching in general?
Well, there are several questions in the question. So first and foremost, for me, AI is extension to who we are. Secondly, we produced and built something without making the environment in which we introduced ready. Meaning that if we as human beings haven't learned to collaborate and co-create, we brought a very powerful tool which can cause us a lot of harm. So we entered a cycle which never known in human history so far, where we're creating something more powerful than ourselves. So there are many dimensions to AI, and I always draw the attention to the both sides, the drawbacks and the incredible things that AI can enable individuals, us as coaches, or no matter what profession you are, also as leaders, global leaders. So the other part, the drawback, is when you have become blinded to the downside of something that you don't even understand. And there are many people out there who don't have the tech background or scientific background I and many other people have, to be able to really see the two sides and what is it that we can do with both sides. Because if we ignore one, that will affect the entire humanity. And also because we're going forward into super conscious AI. Super conscious AI no longer will need the data input. It will be self-aware, which then we then created a whole new species more powerful than us, and we have to learn to coexist with that. And also they'll have to learn to coexist with us. So it's a two-way thing, by the way. So we're talking about going forward in the future, 20, 30, 50 years, and I can take you 100 years down the line with the possibilities of where we can go in every sphere of life. But going back into the question around how, as a coach, I use AI. So, there are things, people who invest in their skills now and are authentic, by the way, and learn and adapt in this stage, they'll be the people who'll be irreplaceable. But AI will replace almost 90% of people's jobs. And I warned that in 2017. And it's already happening in big firms where they already implemented AI. So no profession will be safeguarded as we move into superintelligence and self-aware AI. So if you're not doing something now to differentiate you as a human being around whatever you want to pursue, you're going to be left behind for sure. And, disparity across super wealth and super poor will increase. So, this is the time where people can really think about how they implement AI. So in my coaching sessions, so I implement AI when it comes to, giving notes and giving a summary of every session, by the way. But the teachings that I have, 30 years of observing client, I can guarantee you AI does not have currently. So therefore, no matter what AI, people can use ChatGPT and say, I'm going to ask a question, give me an answer. But ChatGPT does not mimic an expert who can observe everything about you, every word, every facial expression, emotional expression, and feel you. So therefore, as an expert, you have additional skills that they never can do it. So, it can give you something if you're working with a client on a project and saying, give me a summary of this project. Or, I use AI now when I help people write their books. So, I ask many questions and we get some clarity around what my client wants. But we still use my client's intelligence and we use my client's stories for them to authentically write them. But we can get a framework around that. So, I use AI to do a presentation. When I did my TED Talk, I paid somebody. It took 30 days until they got the presentation. I now tell AI in 5 minutes, I have a full presentation. I spend another 10 minutes and I got full presentation. And with graphics, with layout, I just changed the language to make sure that the language really represents me. So every single day there are AI tools being developed. And with some of clients, I developed AI tools. So my client in here that was here was a lawyer. So I'm helping them build AI tool for law, for a specific branch of law. And it's a development thing, consistently development. But they're also asking the question, what will happen to me when this tool is fully functional? So we are addressing all of those well in advance around AI. People who build many skills and also have the authenticity, the human side of it, is the added benefit when we have fully functional self-aware AI. So the two can work very nicely. But I always say, nobody can take the human from you. And, AI can think much faster than you, can give you output much faster. And you ask a question, ChatGPT goes, blah, 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 it's straight there. But if you develop your mind, if you organize all your data in your mind, you can also have an edge above anybody else. So one of the processes in my Climb Greater Heights training, I go thoroughly increase focus, increase memory, with specific actions, get the people to organize their minds. So when I ask them a question, they can give me the answers. Most people, when I go into deep questions, they go numb. They have to think 10 minutes before they give me an answer. So if you're going to take 10 minutes and AI can give it to you instantly, clearly there's 10 minutes and they're lacking in your memory, then you're not accessing your brain in the most efficient way. So AI has given me more sort of things where it comes to bringing the session into clear points, action points, without me spending time to make notes while I'm working with the clients. So clients get so much more out of me when I don't have to worry about making any notes. And they don't have to worry. So, time-wise, they get much more for their money having AI.
Right.
So there's wonderful things that can be done in there. There are many solutions out there. They built AIs that can interpret hieroglyphy and languages that we as humans have never been able to. The scripts that have been there in museums for hundreds of years. Now AI can do it very quickly. So there are many wonderful things it will bring. But do not be blinded of all the negative things that AI will bring into reality.
Yeah, this is true, and it's definitely a conversation that could span another hour or two if we went into that, because I'm a little tempted to say that maybe not, but again, that would extend our conversation a few more hours if we got into that.
Yeah, people need to remember that no matter what technology is, technology complements, but it never replaces you.
Absolutely. Even with AI, even with, tools like ChatGPT, they help you, but you need to be the master of your trade in order to leverage them effectively. Otherwise, if you're a novice, they're gonna introduce you to something, but they're not gonna make you a master in any trade.
Not just that, Igor. It's I always say the mobile phone created many dumb people, but also created a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff like that. So it's not the tech the problem. The problem is how we use tech. So AI now, on the other hand, which is about million times more powerful than any mobile phone we have nowadays. So if you don't have that kind of curiosity for you to learn and become the best, you're going to be offloading even the existing knowledge to AI, which means it's going to make you dumber, and definitely you're not going to be competing in the market. And definitely you're not going to be one of those who actually ride the waves and become very successful and thrive. So AI can also be that part which makes you dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber. But if you are really using it to build your skills and you don't rely on AI, so, if you ask AI certain phrases and you remember those phrases, you don't have to ask them for a second time. But if you rely on AI to answer every email, you're going to become very lazy, and your dictionary and your language will become very lazy. And in time, you'll even forget how to reply.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. I shudder a little bit when I think about generation of kids that are growing up now, and they're taking it for granted, and it's they're growing up with AI being part of their reality for any assignment or any homework or anything like
Mhm.
that. They can just go and get it done through AI. So I wonder what, effects that's going to have later on society and productivity and the economy and all of these things. Again, it's probably a conversation for another time. Thank you, Tony, for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I definitely learned a lot.
You are welcome. Thank you. And may whatever we share not only inspire you, but everybody who's going to be listening to this and everybody they're going to use to inspire other people. Because at the end of the day, it's what we share is matters. And why it matters? Because we all learn from each other.
Absolutely, definitely. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome. Have a good night.